Today I've got the brand new Ork Big Ed Bossbunka, and I've wanted this model ever since I first saw it, just to paint, so I'm going to do that for you and show you how I did it. I've only used basic techniques in this video, so anyone can follow along. First of all, when I built it, I left it in 4 sub-assemblies. I left the main head, the jaw in 2 separate pieces, and there's a comms array on top of it, so that's my 4 sub-assemblies. I sprayed all the bits black and then Leadbelcher. I didn't use Chaos Black spray because it's too expensive for this kind of thing, so I just used any old black primer from Amazon and it worked fine. You don't need Leadbelcher spray, you could always use a brush if you're a total masochist, but as long as you end up with all the bits undercoated in silver, then you're good to go. I hope you've got a lot of wash to hand because we're going to be using a fair bit on this. We're going to be using Nuln Oil, Agrax Earthshade and Canoptek Armourshade, which is absolutely amazing. The best bit about painting orky stuff is you can be as messy as you like and it looks like you meant it. We're going to be painting checks, not checks I hear you say, but don't worry, they're ork checks, so even if they look like they've been painted by a drunken grot, it will still look like it's meant to be, so don't worry about it. And I'll take you through it all and show you how I do it. It's not difficult and I think it looks fantastic. For an accent colour we're going to be using red, so for that we'll use Mephiston Red from Citadel. It's a bit bright, but with our process it's going to dull down a wee bit, so don't worry about that either. I'm going to roughly break this video down into 2 bits, the big bits and the fine details. So we will start off with the big bits first. We'll start with painting some panels Mephiston Red. Choose them at random, but not too close to each other. Sometimes a panel carries on through another feature, such as a beam, so make sure you paint the whole panel. Next, paint some more panels Corvus Black. I've chosen 2 big flat panels because I'm going to put goth checks on them, but feel free to do them any other colour. You'll need a few coats to make it cover over the metallics well enough. Try to keep your paint thin enough that it doesn't leave a texture or brush marks because that can look a bit unsightly. Take your time and clean up with Leadbelcher if you hit any other panels. Don't worry about this, I did it tons of times in this video and my end result is something I'm really happy with, so it doesn't matter one single bit if you make a mistake, just as long as you fix it. I painted these girders black for a bit of variety as they'll be off-white elsewhere. There are piled up tyres on either side of the Bossbunka, so make sure you block them in with Corvus Black too. They won't stay that way, but it's a good base. Same with these tanks on the side. I was going to put checks on them, but I felt it was a bit too much, so I've just left them black. You should turn the model regularly, and if any bits look a bit too uninteresting, maybe too metallic-y, just add one of your colours to a panel and it'll bring a wee bit of interest to the area. These bits in particular look good red because the icons are going to be white later on, and the red works as a nice background for them. Don't forget about the jaw pieces, so do exactly the same for them as you did for the main head. This panel at the front needs to be black for my scheme because of what I'm going to do later with the checks, so go over all the panels and make sure they're opaque with no metal showing through. Next up is Corax White. I painted all the remaining girders white, making the colour as solid as possible. It's quite likely you'll make a mistake here and hit another panel, I certainly did, but just clean it up with the relevant base colour. Be as careful as you can, but don't worry, everything can be fixed. There are several orky icons around the model, so get them with the white too. I've chosen Corax White because it's not pure, and it's kind of off-white and it gives you somewhere to go for highlighting. It all looks a bit uninspiring at this point, but don't worry, it will look great when it's finished. The final main base colour, and yes, we are only using 5 base colours for this, is Runelord Brass. I chose to paint the big eye, the fan casing, most piping, all the corrugated iron and several metal strips around the model, Runelord Brass. Just be careful when you're painting because you don't want to get any of it on the metallics, although at this stage it's still very easy to clean it up because we've not done any washes. Once you wash, if you make a mistake you'll have to do Leadbelcher and then wash over that to make it fit in with the rest of the model. You could also paint the barrels of your 4 guns at this point. Just take your time, get a solid colour on there and you will be absolutely fine. It can be tricky to hold the head while turning it, so just do your best. Try to get in as comfortable position as possible, just to make it easy for yourself. At this point it's a good time to take a look at all your other base coats, make sure they're not patchy and apply another coat if they are. It's all still looking a bit flat, but don't panic, stay on target. This is where it all starts to take shape, and it is of course the wash stage, my favourite stage. Slather on a wash of Nuln Oil on all the Leadbelcher bits, and make sure you hit the Corvus Black bits too. It's important to let one wash dry before applying another, as they can run in mix. It's orks though, so it probably doesn't matter that much. There's a lot of texture on the model that takes a wash really well, especially on the front, so make sure you get a good coat on there. You'll have heard this a million times, but don't let the wash pool anywhere unless that is the look that you actually want. Just get a brush and soak up any excess. There's a tricky bit at the base of the front plate because of the angle it sits at, but remember this will be covered when we reattach the jaw. Next we'll use Canoptek Armourshade, and this is my first time using this wash, and it's an absolute revelation. I loved using it. Hit all the Runelord Brass areas and they'll turn from a wishy-washy light gold colour to a dirty weathered metal. It is awesome. Same again, don't let it pool, and you will see that it's all starting to take shape. After that's dry, apply a wash of Agrax Earthshade across all the red and white areas, and it's as simple as that. I jumped a bit out of sequence here, but I just wanted to try the colours and make sure that they fitted with the overall look of the thing. So there's 2 fat wires on the right hand side of the head. I wanted to paint 1 yellow and 1 green because we're going to do hazard stripes. This next bit is an optional step for the white. I think it looks really cool, but it is quite subtle, so you can choose to skip this if you want. It's really easy to do though. Get some Corax White on your brush, really thin so it's almost water. Wipe most of it off, and then go to one of your girders, one of your white ones, and start near the bottom and just move your brush directly up so that the brightest paint is at the top of the girder, and it's kind of like a very easy blend. Do this once on each girder and it will make a difference. It's subtle but worthwhile. We're going to tie everything together here with a dry brush. This is a really easy stage. We're going to get Necron Compound or any other bright silver and wipe most of it off onto a tissue. Then we're going to scrub it across all the metal areas, including the brass areas, and just leave a little edge highlight on each bit of metal. Don't have the paint too wet or it will cause streaking. The only bits you should avoid with this are the red and white bits because they don't need it. Brass, metal, black, make sure you hit them all. Any texture on the model will pick this up really well and it will give a lovely look. So the dry brush applied with the wash makes the metal look fantastic. It gives you an effect that looks like it should have taken more time than it actually did. So the model's starting to look great, but we need to knock it up another notch. So we're going to do goth checks. I used Corax White to draw a grid on all the large black areas and blocked in all the squares very carefully. I thought at this point that the black checks were too light after the dry brush of Necron Compound, so I went over them with more Corvus Black just to make them a bit more distinct from the white ones. Looking back, I think that was a worthwhile step and the right decision. Take some white scar and highlight the top right of each white check. It looks a bit too neat at this point, so get a little bit of sponge. I stole mine from my carry case and dip it in Corvus Black. Wipe most of it off in a tissue and then start dabbing it across the checks. It looks okay, so on to the next bit. Take up the sponge again and this time grab some dryad bark or any other dark brown. This is going on all the red areas plus the white bits. Don't go overboard, less is definitely more in this case. Just dab it gently on all the edges of the red and the white and some of the flat panels until it looks dirty. If you do this on the white bits, the paint will be very visible, so make sure you only do like 1 or 2 dabs on each girder. It doesn't need more than that, it will just start to look brown after that rather than white. Repeat this step, but use Necron Compound and only do it on the red parts. This provides a lovely little bit of weathering. At this bit, choose some bolts around the model and apply quite a heavy wash of Agrax Earthshade to them. Then paint a thin line directly downwards from the bolt to look like dirty drips of water. At all stages you should be looking at the model, looking for mistakes, looking for things that could be done better. In my case, a lot of the bolts were red after painting, so I just reinforced them with silver and washed them again so they fit in. So we're making progress now. That's us done with all the big areas, so it's just down to the detail now. Choose a few wires and paint them green, red, yellow, whatever you like, purple, blue, anything. Don't bother washing or highlighting them, as it doesn't make much of a difference unless someone's really close. This is a terrain piece, so people are going to be quite far away from it. There's a Loudhailer too, and since it uses all the same techniques that you use in the main body of the Bossbunka, just reapply them to this. It's not tricky, have a bit of confidence. The only bit that's different is light bulbs, and all I did was paint them in Averland Sunset and did a little cross on them with Yriel Yellow. It seems to work, I quite like the effect, but that is my least favourite part of the model. I might actually snip them off at some point. Right, here's an admittedly tricky bit, hazard stripes. You often see hazard stripes and they look a bit gluggy, the line isn't straight, they just don't look perfect. Now mine aren't perfect by any means, but they're passable, so I'm going to show you how I did them. Now we're only going to paint the hazard stripes on the yellow wire and we'll leave the green one untouched. This bit's all about having controllable paint on your brush and trusting yourself. Sketch a diagonal line with Corvus Black across the wire. Make the stripe a few millimetres thick and then block it in. However thick you've made the black stripe, leave that width of yellow, then start your next black one. Continue along the length of the wire like this. I like to apply a Nuln Oil wash to my hazard stripes to dull them down a bit, so I did that here. I also did the same to the green wire. While that dries, make sure your weapons are looking good. The minimum for the guns should be a wash and a dry brush, although you could pick out some of the panels in red too. There's one with a little icon on it, so I painted that red with the white icon. This is a good time to check the rest of the model for any missed detail too. Inside the head there are loads of spent shell cases, so I picked them all out in Runelord Brass and then gave them a little dab of Canoptek Armourshade just to darken them down a bit. The only thing to watch here is that you don't spill too much of the wash onto the metal floor because it will just start to look a bit weird. There's another detail I missed, and it's a little bandage on the right hand side holding the two wires together. So I just painted that Rakarth flesh, gave it an Agrax Earthshade wash and then a Pallid Witch flesh highlight. I seem to have lost the footage where I finish off the hazard stripes, but all you need to do is paint a thin line of Yriel Yellow across the top of each yellow stripe. Easy peasy. For the green pipe, just do a thin highlight of Moot Green all along the length of it, and it'll look fine. There's another bit I didn't film. After feedback from my friends, they said the tyres were too flat, and it's not that I didn't want to highlight them or anything, I just forgot about it completely. So all I did was add a bit of Stirland mud to them to make them look like dirty tyres, and I'm really happy with the effect. And that's it, a nice piece of orky terrain to use in your games. If you've got the Kill Team terrain, you could apply every single one of these techniques and make it look just like this, and have an incredible looking orky battlefield. I'd really like to hear from you in the comments about what you thought of this tutorial. Is there anything you'd change? Which clan are you going to paint them as? And once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.